Louie Gamboa Jalandoni, born on February 16, 1935, and passing away on June 7, 2025, was a central figure in the Philippine revolutionary movement. Most widely recognized for his role as the longtime chairman of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, NDFP, Jalandoni played a crucial part in shaping the country's leftist political landscape. A former Roman Catholic priest who eventually became a revolutionary leader, his life was a complex tapestry of faith, ideology, activism, and commitment to the Filipino masses. He became a symbol of how religious conviction could intertwine with political rebellion, and his decades-long involvement in peace negotiations, activism, and solidarity work helped shape both the revolutionary and political narratives in the Philippines. Jalandoni was born into a wealthy and prominent family in Louie, a city in Negros Occidental, an area long associated with sugar plantations and deep social inequalities between landowners and farm workers. Though raised in privilege, he eventually chose a life of advocacy and activism over comfort and wealth. Early in life, he was drawn to the priesthood, becoming a Roman Catholic priest serving in his home province. It was during this time that he began to observe firsthand the stark disparity between the rich landowners and the landless peasants who toiled in the sugar fields. Witnessing such injustice had a profound impact on him and would eventually redirect the course of his life. In the 1960s, Jalandoni made a dramatic and symbolic gesture that foreshadowed his later revolutionary leanings. He gave away farmlands he had inherited from his family to landless workers. This act reflected his growing disillusionment with the social status quo and his belief that real change required more than charity. It demanded justice and systemic reform. As the socio-political landscape of the Philippines became more volatile, especially during the lead-up to the declaration of martial law in 1972, Jalandoni found himself drawn toward activism that combined his spiritual beliefs with his desire for national liberation. In 1972, shortly after then-President Ferdinand Marcos imposed martial law, Jalandoni helped establish the Christians for National Liberation, CNL. The group aimed to mobilize religious sectors, both Catholic and Protestant, to support the revolutionary struggle against the Marcos dictatorship. Through the CNL, Jalandoni worked to bridge the gap between faith-based communities and the burgeoning leftist resistance. The group became an integral part of the broader resistance movement, with the National Democratic Front of the Philippines later recognizing Jalandoni's instrumental role in recruiting faith-based activists into the communist-led revolution. His activism soon attracted the attention of the authorities, and in 1973, Jalandoni and fellow activist and former nun Connie Ledesma were arrested. Their detention was part of the Marcos regime's sweeping crackdown on dissenters. However, by mid-1974, both Jalandoni and Ledesma were released. Around this time, Jalandoni began to distance himself from formal priesthood. By the end of 1974, he and Ledesma were dispensed from their religious vows. They were married on December 19, 1974, in Mandaluyong, in a ceremony officiated by Cardinal Jaime Sin, who himself would later become a prominent figure in the People Power movement that toppled Marcos. In 1975, Jalandoni was among those who supported the historic strike at La Tondina, a company in the brewing industry, where around 600 contractual workers were demanding regular employment status. Alongside student leader Edgar Jobson, Jalandoni worked with labor organizers to prepare for the strike, which became one of the earliest major workers' actions under martial law and marked a critical moment in the resistance movement. This event underlined his deepening commitment to linking religious conviction with political activism and class struggle. Eventually, Jalandoni went into exile in the Netherlands, where he would spend the rest of his life. In exile, he worked closely with Jose Maria Sison, the founder of the Communist Party of the Philippines and chief ideologue of the National Democratic Movement. As one of Sison's trusted allies, Jalandoni remained active in the movement, even from abroad. In 1989, he formally took on the role of chief peace negotiator for the NDFP in its talks with the Philippine government. He would remain in this position until 2016, engaging in multiple rounds of negotiations with various administrations, including those of Corazon Aquino, Fidel Ramos, Joseph Estrada, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, and Benigno Aquino III. Throughout his tenure as chief negotiator, Jalandoni maintained a principled stand on key issues such as land reform, human rights, and national sovereignty. His work sought to address the root causes of the armed conflict through political and economic reforms. Although these peace talks often faced obstacles and even collapses, Jalandoni's presence in the negotiation table underscored the NDFP's desire for a political, not just military, resolution to the long-running insurgency. His involvement lent credibility to the process and provided a steady hand in an often turbulent negotiation environment. In later years, particularly under the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte, the political climate became increasingly hostile toward leftist and revolutionary groups. In June 2022, the Philippine Anti-Terrorism Council officially designated Jalandoni as a terrorist. This move was widely criticized by human rights organizations and progressive groups, both locally and internationally. The International League of People's Struggle, ILPS, an organization that Jalandoni was affiliated with, actively campaigned for the removal of his terrorist designation, arguing that he was a peace advocate and not a terrorist. Despite this labeling, Jalandoni remained an important moral and political voice within the movement and among international solidarity networks. On the personal front, Jalandoni's life was intertwined with that of Connie Ledesma. Their partnership symbolized a shared commitment to both revolutionary ideals and to each other. Ledesma, who had once been a nun and a school principal, became an active revolutionary in her own right, often participating in diplomatic and solidarity efforts alongside her husband. Their marriage was not only a personal union, but also a political partnership that spanned 5 decades of activism and exile. Jalandoni eventually became a naturalized citizen of the Netherlands, where he lived with Ledesma in the city of Utrecht. Even in exile, he remained deeply involved in Filipino political affairs, frequently issuing statements, participating in forums, and giving interviews. He never severed ties with the Philippines, instead continuing to serve as an advocate for peace, justice, and national liberation from abroad. On June 7, 2025, Louie Jalandoni passed away at the age of 90 in Utrecht. His death marked the end of a life dedicated to faith, resistance, and revolution. He left behind a legacy that straddled both the religious and the political, one that challenged the dominant narratives of his time and sought to empower the oppressed through radical change. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and kindly subscribe.